Before the next episode of X Job Downloaded starts, I have a big favour to ask. If you've enjoyed any of our episodes so far, please can you click on the follow button on your platform. I'm on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon and YouTube. It costs nothing to follow, but makes a real difference to me as a podcast producer. Thank you. This interview is being tape recorded. My name is Paul Maleary and this is X Job Downloaded. And today I'm going to interview Andy Hayman. Now, Andy Hayman was a senior officer with the Metropolitan Police. Before that, he was with Essex Police. Well, no, before that, you were with Norfolk Police, weren't you? So you've gone through the whole... But where did it all begin for Andy Hayman?
Well, it goes back to when I was 16. I joined the cadets with John Hedgethorne was the chief inspector.
Yeah.
What a character he was. That cohort was some real names that if you look over your shoulder now, you think, crumbs, they were all cadets.
Yeah.
You know, I heard you were sort of chatting to Bob Scott, but he was one of the first in the cadet team. But in my era, you had Mike Todd, Graham Carey, so Paul Watson. So they were people who were sort of budding cops in the old system of join when you're 16, and provided you kept your nose clean, you'd go straight through to be a cop. And that's what I did.
I remember going to training school and your photograph was very prominent. I mean, Andy Hayman stood out well in the cadet school. I hope they've still got those pictures up in that.
Probably not.
No, probably not. But so are you an Essex boy originally?
Yeah, Southend boy. Parents still alive in Southend.
Oh, brilliant.
And the only reason I left Southend was sort of really I was caught in, and that was the halfway place between what was now my wife and was my girlfriend then, was North Essex. But mainly I'm South Essex. Southend, born and bred.
Wow.
Yeah.
And having done your cadets, I mean, John Hedgethorne was legendary in the cadets and the stuff that he did with them, moulding great people into even better people.
Yeah.
That sort of work, he probably didn't get the recognition that he deserved.
He was a one-off. I mean, you can say that about many people, but with Hedgethorne, I mean, he was a nutcase. He'd take us out on these hiking holidays. Well, all the holidays really, but like treks right across Snowdonia. I mean, nowadays you wouldn't do it. You know, it was
you wouldn't be allowed to.
No, the height of winter, and all you had was these canvas to sleep under. The sleeping bags you'd probably get out of, I don't know, M&S for 20 quid. So they weren't even the proper expedition stuff. And head down and just like walk all day, every day. He was a nutcase. And he used to take us on these race walk bonanzas. And it was a 24-hour walk. He'd be walking around the track for 24 hours.
But he used to walk into work, didn't he? From wherever he lived, he'd walk into work.
Yeah, he was a good guy. And as you say, probably didn't... he wasn't the most popular with the senior ranks. He used to hold his ground. He had his own fiefdom. He was the chief inspector. And if you crossed him, you got marched in at 6 o'clock at night. And it was left, right in front of him, saluting. And you'd get it. You'd get the hairdryer. But you knew where you stood.
Yeah.
And I think if you look back now, as I said, over your shoulder, and look at the people who came through that cohort and what they achieved within the police service. I mean, it doesn't matter about senior rank or whatever, but specialisms or whatever it might be, they had the grounding from Hedgethorne.
Yeah, absolutely. And because then Phil Knight took on the mantle as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
He was another one. He's another force.
Yeah, Peter Knight.
Peter Knight. Yeah. And he's just passed away, sadly.
Yeah, he has, yeah.
So you've done your cadet stuff, and then it's PC Hayman.
Yeah. Go to Lee, which was convenient because I only lived in Southend. But I was at Lee for 6-7 years. Some real good characters there, as we all have worked alongside. But the memories of Lee, I mean, we used to drive around in those minis, and they had the stop blinds with, you pull the cord down. And I was talking to someone else the other day about this. I said, who ever thought that up? It's mad. Because you get in front of a motor to pull it, you pull the blind up, you can't see anything.
Can't see it, no.
So they do a left or a right, and then you're standing there in no man's land. Where's the car gone?
Yeah.
But yeah, memories of walking the Broadway, shaking my hands shaking so much when I wrote my first HORT1, the L Horties. Also the Broadway, there was a car one night. We were driving along there on nights. Coming towards us, it's all you could see was these sparks. And the only thing that was keeping the front offside wing to the car was the radio cable that went to the aerial on the wing. God. This bloke was completely rat-faced. And he falls out of the car. We nick him, take him back to the nick. And I mean, this is like little tinkers, what they used to go up to. He'd have in his coat, he had a bottle of pure wee and a pipe. And he was having a little go at filling up the urine sample from that. I mean, he had no chance. He had no chance. He soon got put out in the backyard. So it was good times at least.
Yeah. And I mean, that's all changed down there. But the Southend Borough still has that connection. You know, the borough still has a connection with the force, and you've still got a number of people that served in the borough.
The old White Helmets.
White Helmet Brigade. I saw Bob Craven in a post the other day, and he was with somebody who was wearing a white helmet and a uniform, and I think that person probably owned that uniform from brand new looking at it. But
and it still fit him.
Yeah, he did very well. None of mine would. So you've done your stuff there. At what point did you go for your first promotion? I mean, you've gone through about, I don't know, a dozen promotions.
Yeah, but I was a slow starter. If you look, I'll come into this as we go through this chat. I did about, I think I was 7 years before I was promoted to sergeant.
Oh, right.
And that included going down to training school, which was a weird decision, but it worked out all right. And then I'd gone into sort of training as well. In fact, Mike Todd convinced me to do that. And that was around when all the pace stuff was going on. So I left there after about 6-7 years on promotion to Brentwood. I was a custody sergeant there for a bit. I was only there for about a year or so. And then it was another 4 years before I made inspector. So I was about 11, 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And then it all clicked. But I think it's really interesting. You know, why did you join the police? Did I join the police because I wanted to become a senior cop? No, I didn't. I just wanted to be a cop. And it's not until you're in the job, I think, you start making your own choices as to what you want to do. I mean, there was a real crossroads for me when I was a DS at Basildon. Fantastic desk guy, Kev Macy, Maurice Brazier, Pete Walker. Both those, unfortunately, passed. That was the sort of DS table. The DI was Dave Bright. And I was just loving being a DS there. And Keith Southgate sort of said to me, and Peter Wendt actually, because they were the superintendents at the time, do you fancy the squad? I thought, I'd have some of that because I just fancied it. And then someone else, I forget who it was, whispered in my ear and said, well, you've got to commit to that. You can't just go in there and do a couple of years and have a ball and then come out. You've got to do some time.
Yeah.
And I was then starting to think whether or not I wanted to commit for that amount of time. And I'm a bit of a kind of an adrenaline freak. And although the pull of it was sexy, and it was the front end of policing for a detective, I guess, I'm not sure I would be able to sit around in the car all day. I think that would have driven me nuts.
Yeah.
So I didn't do that. And then, things worked out differently.
Your time at Basildon, I mean, the people that you've named are fantastic. Peter Wendt, what a gentleman he was. Keith Southgate, I got selected by him and Roger Easton to go on CID. But my first interaction with you was in Ashford.
Right, yeah.
I remember, and there were a number of...
I'll tell you what a place that was. I'm not quite sure all the stories should come out about Ashford.
No, let's not.
Maybe not go there. But why did I go there? Because it would never have been my first choice.
No.
And I can't even remember. I think...
The commandant was an Essex bloke.
Yeah, it was.
Levy.
Alan Levy, yeah.
Alan Levy, yeah.
I think Murray Coleman was down there with Gary Skull. And I thought to myself, do you know what? Those two, they're good boys, good cops.
Yeah.
Why are they doing it? And I chatted to them. And I'm sure it was a conversation with Murray that said, look, you've got to do this. This is like you're putting back into the front end people who are going to come into the job. And if you're not careful, people on in the training wing are the ones that count rubbers and staples. They haven't got a clue. They haven't kicked a door in at 6 o'clock in the morning or seen the dark.
No.
And so therefore, if you want to really make a difference and put something back into it, you don't want to be like a Jack Regan, but what you want to do is tell someone how to do it, and they have credibility of it. And I thought, do you know what, that's about right. So that's why I did it, and I went from there to Shotley.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, which was good.
That must have been when Shotley first started, though.
Yeah. It was so cold. So you'd go out on a parade. I'll tell you, we had morning parade. The recruits used to go out. It was so cold, and I remember I was going around inspecting. I think I was a sergeant there, and the inspector was doing the morning parade inspection with the old drill pig. And we're walking along, and then this drill pig just stops at this poor guy, and he's got his stick, and you could see poking out from below his bottom of his trousers was this like stripy material. So he picks his stick up, and he puts it underneath the hem of his trousers and lifts it up, and gives this guy absolute dog's abuse. He's got his pajamas on underneath his trousers. Oh. But that, you look at it now, you couldn't necessarily give the abuse that they got then. But no one really looked at that to heart. Maybe some did, I don't know, but that was all part of it, and everyone had a giggle.
But were they if they took that too seriously or took it personally, were they the right people to join the job? But you're brought up in a culture, as we said, where as a cadet, you were run up and down the stairs, or you get extra duties or whatever it may be, and that was how discipline is formed.
There's a little story in the cadets, and there's a guy who used to be at Basel, a guy called Paul Watson. His nickname was Apple Watson. Quite a tall guy. And Nick Banks was the PTI. So you'd go in the morning, do your PT in the gym, and then you had to shower. Most people wanted to shower upstairs in the accommodation block, but they insisted you showered in the changing rooms in the block, sports block. They were freezing cold. So no one wanted to do it. So Nick Banks used to go into the canteen, sit in the corner table, and he had a view. You know that corridor with the picture shot? He had a view there. So you'd have to time it right. You'd leg it. You'd sprint down there to try and beat his eye vision. And then the next thing you had to do was to get in the lift without him seeing it. So one morning, we've done it. We've done the run of dare to get into the lift without Banks seeing you. And we're in the lift, and Apple Watson's dragged his heels. He hasn't got there quick enough. So, in that lift, there's like a beam of light. If you hit that beam of light, it doesn't close the door, it opens it up. So he's got to jump the beam of light to get into the lift. He does the jump. He gets in the lift. The only thing is he forgot to lower his head, and he cracked his head right on the top of the lift. Hilarious. Not for him, though.
No.
There was claret everywhere. But we never got caught.
No.
We got with it.
But again, this is part of the character. And I think that the regional training schools, and I've said this before, and the cadet system was such that it would identify the right people for the right roles.
Yeah, spot
on. And regional training schools, by having it on local, you can't compare people.
No, I know I still bump into ex-cadets now, sadly, at funerals. And what's the first thing we do? Like, we reminisce. I mean, I had a right result on my 60th birthday. There was three people there. The last time I'd seen one was when I was 8 years of age at primary school. And this is the beauty of social media. And the other was two ex-cadets who I hadn't seen for donkey's years. And I managed to reach out, and they come along to the 60th, which was great. But you know what? If I close my eyes, all three of them, it was as if I was like 8 and 9
I know.
10 again. The voices were the same, the mannerisms were the same, and we then just picked up where we left off. Really nice.
But that's equally the skills of a police officer.
Yeah.
And because we are quite transient in what we do, we can pick up conversations that were held 15 years ago when we were posted to a particular place.
Yeah.
Having gone through your service in Essex, what was the highlight of working in Essex? Because you were chief inspector at Chelmsford,
yeah, that's
weren't
a
you?
really good question. I would say the influence that I was able to have when I got to about sort of superintendent, chief superintendent, I was divisional commander at Chelmsford before I went to the Met on promotion. And just before that, I kind of done a headquarters job where I worked really closely with John Burrow and the ACPO team. And I got an insight as to how ACPO was operating. And John Burrow was I would say it's wouldn't I, but I thought he was outstanding.
He's a real gentleman. Yeah. He's still alive. He's still over this way, and he's still.
Yeah, I did some voluntary work when the pandemic was on in the doctor's surgery, and he didn't come in, but his neighbours came in, and I said, "Oh, you know John Burrow?" Oh, yeah, he's still walking about. But anyway, going back, although I had a real ball, working at different ranks operationally, that was I wouldn't want to forget that at all. But I think the penny dropped for me when I was about superintendent. I just decided, all right, I could make a right pig's ear of this if I try and get into ACPO. But I reckon I've got to have a go at this. And because I can't keep moaning about what's going on about the leadership if I can't start to influence it. And all right, and I'll give you some stories as we go through this. I know people would knock me and would be not that supportive, but I'd like to think in the main, every time I went and did something at a senior rank, I was doing it for the right reason and thought it through. And I always used to say to my people, look, I need you more than you need me. So therefore, whatever I can do to make your job easier, I'm going to do it. And that's when I saw John Burrow and I saw the insight of how he was operating. I thought, that's good. But even he got it wrong sometimes. There was a real controversy where Tom Rogers was the commandant of the Special Constabulary.
Yeah.
And it was all kicking off because the allowances were not being paid as they should have been. So dry cleaning used to be a token. That got pulled. Refreshment break and money was getting pulled. So it was an angry crowd of special constables, and rightly so. So Tom Rogers had given me the heads up. He said, you're going to have to speak to the chief. So he's going to address the annual meeting, and it's going to be in the assembly hall at headquarters. It's going to be like standing room only. And he needs to be on top form. So I see the chief a couple of days beforehand, and he's always really thoughtful. And I said, boss, I think it's going to be an ugly crowd. I said, you can't wing it. You're going to have to go in there and give them something. You can't walk in there with nothing. You've got to have some goodies in your bag. And he was really dismissive, and I was really surprised. I said, look, Tom Rogers, he's a top operator. If he's telling us it's going to kick off, it's going to kick off. So, no, it's fine. They'll be fine. So we go up, we leave his office, and we go up to the stairs to the assembly hall. We haven't even got off the ground floor, and there are people standing on the stairway because they can't get into the assembly hall. I'm thinking, oh dear, this is going to go horribly pear-shaped. And you could see John Burrow think, and he's kind of like taking a step back, and he has to literally nudge through people. He gets onto the stage, and he tries to placate them. He's got no chance. He's getting catcalled, really, really not abuse. What are we going to do there, Chief? That's no good, Chief. We come here with volunteers. We do it for nothing. Where's our dry cleaning tokens? He screwed it. That's the only time I've seen him screw it. And we walked back to his office, and he said, I've balls that up. And I didn't reply. But so even someone like that gets it wrong. And so therefore, having that privilege of insight, you were, travelling the car with him or working with Charlie Clark and Jeff Markham, you just saw a different side to what it was like to be an ACPO, and I learned a lot from that.
Well, I mean, two other great names, Jeff Markham and Charlie Clark. I know Charlie Clark keeps in touch with Bob quite a lot.
Yeah.
What was the motivation for you to move forces to? You went to Norfolk, didn't you? Did you go there as?
I went from. The senior command course was Andy Drain and I went at the same time. Mike Todd had sort of been a really good friend to me, and I hope I was a good friend to him. He was about 2 or 3 years ahead of me, so I'd done the management exchange in the Met. I was just behind him. He'd done it the year before. I did it the year after. And the SCC, he gave me the heads up. He says it's a funny old animal. You've got people there who are talented, but most of them there because they think they deserve to be there. And we ain't part of that. we haven't gone through all the junior command courses and intermediate command course. We haven't had the special course. We're being parachuted in as people who've just got there, haven't got through the
natural
selection.
ability.
Yeah. He says you're going to find it awkward, and it was awkward because they all knew each other. They'd known each other since they were on the special course. I don't want to overgeneralise because there were some really talented people there, but generally it was a difficult culture. And he said to me, look, he was in the Met. He said, look, I think the Met will be recruiting. No, actually, he was in Nottingham. Sorry, I beg your pardon. He was in Nottingham. He said, I think as the Met come up, we've done it as an inspector. That would be something that would probably suit the way our backgrounds and that. And he was right. So when I'd done the SEC, the jobs came up in the Met, and I went into the drugs portfolio. And I learned something from Paul Condon when he was a commissioner, and I was interviewed by him. And then on my first day, you walk in there with a brand new uniform on it. And he says, right, Essex boy in the Met should be all right. He said, I'm just going to let you know. If you think that I select people from outside the Met on a half-hour interview, forget it. He says, I know all about you. I know what time you get up. I know what all your career background. And he said, and that's what, if you ever get to a senior rank, that's what you got to do, because one interview is not enough.
No.
So yeah, and I did the drugs portfolio, which included Trident, which was Hugh Ward was the commander, the ex-chief of Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Still go out with him socially, nice guy. And that was all the drug-related contract murders, where people from Jamaica were coming in and doing drive-by murders on the streets and in nightclubs. So that was a fantastic period.
I bet that was.
Fantastic period. Yeah, just, on a different level, really.
Do you think that, Paul Condon got berated because he said there was a question, why are you stopping so many black people in South London? He said, well, actually, that's because the majority of the people that live in South London are black, and if they're committing crime, they're going to get stopped.
Well, you know, Paul, how the equation goes. I mean, if a victim or a witness says, well, I would describe the assailant as being in the mid-20s, either Asian-looking or black Afro-Caribbean, and wearing a sweatshirt and jeans, and that is consistent, well, I ain't going to go around telling people to stop a white European in a suit.
No.
And the same thing happened, although it went horribly wrong really in Westminster. When we were doing stop and search for terrorism, there was a big hoo-ha amongst the politicians, no change there, and they didn't like the balance when they looked at the stats. So we had cops around Westminster stopping MPs actually, and people who are suited and booted when they didn't fit the profile of a terrorist. Well, what's the point in doing that?
Yeah.
It's crazy. I think you'd have to stare it out and say, no, that's what the intel is telling us that. So our team should be going out and stopping the search in that way.
Yeah, because you're not there to placate people. You're there to do a job of work.
Absolutely, yeah.
So how long were you there for the first time that you went to the Met?
So the Met, I did a year or so. So I went in 98, and then that was drugs, Trident, and then I went into anti-corruption, which again was a real eye-opener for me. You know, I don't think I'm naive to people getting up to all sorts, but you know, in my mind at that time, sort of naughtiness was maybe a cuffing things or whatever. Some dodgy interviewing, but this was like the top end,
wholesale.
Yeah, in fact, I just did a gig last week for a documentary that's coming out, which was given all the stuff that's going on in the Met at the moment, they're revisiting, you know, what is this cycle of corruption that's going on in the Met. And Robert Mark obviously cleared it out in the 70s. Paul Condon suddenly realised there was a big intelligence called the Ghost Squad, which was collecting intelligence about, is there truly corruption in the Met or is it just a fallacy? And that was under the covers for years, really. A guy called Roger Gasper was in charge of that. And he then presented this report and basically said, you've got to clear the top of the stables out again. It is like horrendous. And to be put into that, Roy Clark was the DAC and John Stevens, who was the commissioner, put me in to replace him when he retired.
Right.
And I was so lucky to have top operators who were doing. I mean, it was all I was being a figurehead, heading up. I was part of a team, and these were people who had been involved in serious crime investigations for years, and they had to be really ahead of the game in the way in which they framed stings and arrests. And actually, you had to pinch yourself that you've got people like one particular job where he's signed on duty, and there he is in a hotel room which we'd bugged up, and he was plotting to kill someone and torture him in this hotel room, and then take him down to a car crusher and crush him. This guy is a DC out of Ilford, Martin Morgan, 8 years. He'd never pulled his salary for 2 years. He didn't need to, because the guy that he was working to, the bad guy, was giving him so many backhanders, he just lived off that. So that world of corruption, I didn't think that went on.
No.
Another job. I mean, this one's it's shocking. So there's a villain, and he's had a fallout with his partner. It's really acrimonious, and there's a child involved. So this guy is really worried that his wife's going to get the custody of the child. So he goes to a bad guy who was an ex-cop, a guy called Jonathan Rees. His partner was Sid Fillery. They were suspected of killing a partner in a pub car park in South London. They run a company called Southern Investigations. Real bad guys. They went away for this job. So he's having a conversation in a pub and said, look, how am I going to secure custody of my child? I can't second guess this. This has got to happen. No problem. What we'll do is we'll plant some cocaine in her car. We've got a cop in the inside. We'll get a dodgy search warrant, go around her gaff, search the house, search the car, find the drugs. She gets nicked, goes for custody. She's got no chance because she's a drug dealer. Sweet. That cost $7,500. Now, we were ahead of it, and we were doing bugging and surveillance of them. So we managed to, the day before the search warrant's going to get done, we screw the car, the cops, take all the bad drugs out, replace it with false stuff. Sure enough, the cop gets the search warrant, nicks the partner, takes her back in custody. We tell the divisional commander what the scam is, so she gets released, and then we nick all three of them the next day. Now, that is going on in London with serving Met officers. And so to be part of that...
Amazing.
...is really, it is amazing. But
it's disappointing as well.
Yeah. It's like, is this right? I can't believe it.
I mean, I do get disappointed in policing when that happens. I'm delighted that there are teams that pick these people up. But I wonder if there's a correlation, certainly in the 70s, between poor pay and an increase in corruption. I wonder if we're going to see that because the pay hasn't gone forward. And I wonder if we've got people that are on...
I don't know, because I think this could be a couple of examples. So, like, I don't want to hook onto Morgan, but Morgan was like, I think he liked the lifestyle of the sort of white boy villain, and he liked the sort of the sexiness of that. So that's what pulled him in. But the greed part, I see that a little bit, but you'd have I wouldn't say you have sympathy, but you'd understand if someone couldn't get food on the table, and so they were doing a bit of dodginess to try and achieve that. I can get that, but this wasn't the case. It was a bit of a power thing. I mean, when we looked at Ali Design, which it went a bit sort of belly up towards halfway through the investigation. He wriggled like a trout on the end of a fishing line. But eventually he did go down. I mean, that was all about power and influence. And I think, so I don't, who knows what gets into people's heads to do that, but it must be a really uncomfortable feeling to be lying in bed at night and when the door goes at 5 or 6, whatever, is it because a loved one is hurt and it's an agony message, or is it, my house done?
Yeah.
Before you know it, all your house is being spun.
Yeah, and rightfully so. If they're that at it, then and I've got to say that the anti-corruption people do so much work in the background.
Yeah.
It's very rare that they make a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, the people that I was so lucky to have in the team, I mean, they leave me standing. I mean, they're a Premier League. I'm the Vauxhall. I mean, they've got nowhere experience in them. So my job was to create an environment where they can operate.
Yeah.
So they were audacious. They were adventurous in their planning. Some of the plots they came up with had to be better than the bad guys. That was unbelievably the case. What then happened is exactly the same as Robert Mark's time. So everyone thinks they've cleared out the stables, no more rotten apples in the barrel. And rotten apples always rot the others. So that's why you have to get rid of them. And then we had other commissioners came in after John Stevens, John Stevens was absolutely ruthless. He had a sort of way about him which you would never want to cross. And he, I think, was the last commissioner who you could actually stand up and go, he knew what he was up to. He was an operational cop and great bloke. After that, whether or not, it was about budget constraints, I don't know, but police stations getting closed, all the intel stopped, so there was no corruption intel whatsoever. And inevitably what's going to happen then is the bad guys go, hang on, it's all a bit of a soft touch now. When you see these guys at Charing Cross, there was a whole shift at Charing Cross. Cressler was the commissioner, and all they were really up to no good. It's a bit like the old choir boys of in that film. And they just got a slap on the wrist. So everyone else looks at that and goes, hang on, we're not even going to get on a discipline hearing here. So what happens is they get a resurgence and there's no intel. And everyone thinks, well, vetting will do it. Well, of course it won't. Vetting is only as good as the day it was done. I could be vetted today, get a clean bill of health tomorrow.
It's like an MOT.
Yeah, I'm out playing around. So now, Mark Rowley, the commissioner, I think he's up against it because I think he's got to play catch-up before he can start being effective.
Yeah.
And in my CIB3 corruption team, I'm sure I think I had about 400, maybe 500 cops, and they were all the top tackles.
Wow.
Plus the intel. He's scrapping around trying to find loose change. He's got about 100. That ain't going to have any impact. So the poor old boy, he's on a hiding to nothing.
Well, he is, and there's other things in there. I mean, the Casey reports made it quite clear that community policing is one of the main things. I think people over institutional racism doesn't mean the whole place is institutionally racist. It's got a completely different connotation to that. But I think that for him and others to go on record and say, this has been like this for years, well, actually been part of it for years. So what have you done?
Yeah, what have you done?
What did you do to stop this all these bad things from happening? And the fact is, it's a minority of people that are doing these stupid things when the majority are working bloody hard to keep the public of the United Kingdom safe.
Yeah, I mean, and also, I'll take me off to him. He's Mark's taking it on. But as we'll probably find out as we go through this, is that I'll describe that the Met is a viper nest at a senior level. And you've got no friends outside your office.
No.
And that's all the politicians are having a pop at you. You've got other people within the force having a pop at you. You have to be really cute and have crocodile skin. And I think all that mixed up with the challenge of what he's got to do it's going to be a real big ask.
Oh, yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
You've concluded your first term in the Met, and then you've gone to Norfolk as the chief constable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like night and day.
I'll tell you what. Well, Keith Povey, he was chief HMI. Ronnie Flanagan was chief HMI, and Povey about the same time. So they said to me, "Well, look, you're in with a shout. It's going to be about 10 or 12 shortlisted, and then after half time they'll cut it down to 6. And so you're in with a shout if you play it right, but you cannot dress like you dress." I said, what are you on about? Cheeky sod. I said, I thought my suit was all right. No, it's too sharp. You've got to play it down. So you go to Norfolk. He said, don't go in there wearing a deerstalker, but don't go in there wearing a city suit. He said, you'll frighten them. So anyway, I go in there. I get through it. After day one, there's a death by dinner. They don't do it now. So you sit literally around a dinner table in a hotel, and you got a police authority member either side. You have one course, and then after that course, you move on and you go and sit with two other people.
Right.
So I'll never forget, I was there with this first course, and the deputy chairman, he owns most of North Norfolk. Oh, Mr. Hayman. He says, so do you go shooting? I thought, what? All I had was visions of Danny Falls and Horses sketch. No, I don't. What about riding then? I thought, oh no, this ain't going well. I said, no, look, I'll be honest with you. I said, I don't do any of these country sports. I said, I just haven't got the background for that. So I just try to play it with a straight
That's
back.
why Gareth Wilson went there.
Yeah. But what was really, this is like an absolute true account. So I get the job, and one thing, if you can find out, was it unanimous or was it not? And the reason why you want to find that out as the chief is if it wasn't and you got someone offside, you got to work hard to get them back in the camp. So took the old clerk out for a few beers to get him a bit loose-tongued. I said, come on, let me in a secret in. Was it unanimous or not? He said, well, it was, but it was close. He said, there's one that you've got to work on. So he tells me this story. He said, after day one, the chairman says, okay then, ladies and gentlemen of the police authority, it's early days, we've got another 2 days of selection, but I'd just like to go around the table and get a feel for how you see things. So they go around and they go, well, yeah, he's done all right. He's done all right. Oh, it's all blokes. So he's done all right. And then this female member says, oh, well, it's this, that man Hayman. He said, I understood what he was saying. And I said, he couldn't dispute what he was saying on his presentation. But Chairman, do we really want to have a man as our chief constable with an accent like that?
How funny is that?
Yeah. Yeah. So there was still, the country set, and it's still the prejudice of it. But in that role, all right, I was only there for 2 years. The truth be known, I'll come into how I got out of that in a minute. But that was a really good time. The deputy was a guy called Colin Paul. It was all National Crime Squad background, so he was good guy to have as your deputy. And you had to look after the Queen. There's some great stories here, Paul. I'll say it. So I'll get there in the I'll start the 2nd of January. So
and the Queen is in residency at Sandringham. At
she
that time.
goes there, and she leaves on the as it was then the passing of her father in February, and the royal family set their diary by the same thing each year. If they're doing a foreign visit, it'll be the same weekend, and on the 3rd Sunday of January, whoever the chief constable is gets invited to lunch at Sandringham, and with their partner. So this letter lands on the doorstep. And I thought, what the hell's this? I said to my wife, I said, we've been invited to lunch. What? I said, it'd be fine. There'll be loads of people there. It'll be like a finger buffet. No problem at all. So when we get there, we have to go to the church first, Sandringham. So we sort of pile up there, and then you go out into after the service. You then go into the vicarage for lemon barley. All I wanted to do was down a pint. Right. And then you drive up to the front of Sandringham, and there's like 12 people, 12 guests for lunch. I said, you're having a laugh. So we go in the front door, and the lady waiting grabs hold of my wife, takes her into the powder room, and she said, her account is, I couldn't believe it. She sits me down. She's, I've spent hours doing my makeup and my hair. And the first thing she says to me is, would you like your hair done, Mrs. Hayman? you cheeky cow. I've just spent 2 hours on it. Anyway, we go into the sort of pre-lunch bit and get on the chat, the royal family, the Duke and the Queen comes out. And, I'm doing all right. I'm holding my own. Talking about how she was a girl there, and little girl, and she used to skate on the ice lake. So eventually the equerry comes out and he shows this table plan, and it's an oval table. And the other guests there, we've got Nicholas Soames, Lord Soames, that's Winston Churchill's grandson. I think he was there with his niece. We've got the Archbishop of Canterbury, and they've done a nice little touch for him. They've made all the serviettes on the table. They've made them like the Archbishop's crown. And then there was a lady in waiting, the equerry, and then there was one of the Queen's best friends. So when I sit down, I've got the Queen to my left, and I'll sit next to her. And to my right is this lady. My wife's opposite, sitting next to the Duke. And then that's it. So I then start to turn to my left to talk to the Queen, and she's like blanking me. She's turned her shoulder on me. I'm thinking, I thought it was going sweet as a nut. Obviously, it isn't. Anyway, this lady next to me, she goes, "Oh, Chief Constable, you do know the etiquette, don't you?" I said, "What?" "Oh, it's 2 courses to the left, and it's 2 courses to the right." I said, "Do what?" "Oh, yes, that's the etiquette. So the Queen will turn to you after the main course." I thought, well, I'm stuck with you then. So I then said, trying to find a conversational piece, I said, stress is a funny old thing. And I said, new job. I said, I'm looking to buy a property up here, so I don't have so much travelling. Trying to get all that coordinated. I said, it's a nightmare. I said, have you ever gone through that moving house? Yeah, she said, no. She said, Chief Constable, our house has been in the family for over 600 years. We don't move house.
Oh, brilliant.
But there's another as the lunch goes on, and then eventually the Queen turns to me, and she's sitting there, and she's got her leg up on a little footstool, and it's when she'd done her knee.
Right.
So I'm sorry to hear about your knee. I said, you have any treatment for it? She said, oh, yes. She said, it's dreadful. She said, I have to go to King's Lynn. I have physiotherapy. I said, that can be painful. She said, the physiotherapy, that's okay. Why is it the physio always has cold hands? and then the cheese ball comes out. So she says to me, Chief Constable, she says, do you like cheese? I said, yeah, partial to a bit of Stilton. So this footman comes out. Port, sir, Taylor's 1937. Yeah, I do. put that in there. So you have to help yourself. They don't serve it. So there's this spoon with a very long arm on it and a very small scoop. I thought, and biscuits. I thought, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to scoop it into this big pot of Stilton. It's going to fly everywhere. So I'm really, really careful, and I get the spoon out. And I thought, I'll get my knife and I'll scrape that cheese off the end of that spoon on my crackers. Sweet. So I do that and I pull it off. No mess at all. So then the Queen's obviously been watching me. Very mischievous, got a lovely little, as we all know, lovely smile and everything. And she goes and puts the spoon in there. And as she pulls the spoon out, she just looks at me. And what I hadn't noticed is underneath the stem is a little button. Oh. And when you press the button, it slices along the segment, just falls out. And she gave me this look and a smile as if to say, you prat.
Oh, what a lady, though.
Yeah. But Norfolk was great. I went there the night before. All the family used to arrive, and they would arrive at different times, and I used to go there Christmas Eve to make sure everything was okay. And it was just a privilege to do it. I did that. I did those lunches, 2 of those lunches, both exactly the same. The second one, the funny story from that was we were talking about Fagin. When Fagin broke into a room in the palace, which was resigning potentially when I was my predecessor nearly went on that. And I said, what was that like? And she said, well, I just woke up and he was sitting there. And she said, and what's really weird? She said, I now know I made 2 phone calls. I can't remember any of those phone call content. And she slept alone. She said, I'm really glad I slept alone, because if the Duke had been in there, I think that would have been a ruck.
Yeah.
And then she said, but why? The other day she said, I don't know whether you'll know about this, Chief. She said, but I was sitting having my hair done, and my bedroom overlooks the whole of the back of Sandringham. She said, I saw one of your officers. It was like something out of Benny Hill. And this is the Queen's son. I said, what do you mean? He was chasing this man across the lawn. So she had this, I don't know, as we all know, fantastic monarch, and to have the privilege of looking after him. There's another little story where another thing that's always in the royal diary is Prince Charles is the only person who can stay at Sandringham, as it was then, without the Queen there, because he's the heir to the throne. Right. So he used to have a long weekend. Starts on the Thursday. Thursday. Starts on the Sunday, ends on the Thursday. And he'd invite all different people there. And then it will culminate on the Thursday with music in the church, somewhere in Norfolk, Swaffham, in candlelight. And then there will be a half-time interval, bit of bubbly, and then go back in for the second half. Now, a little trick I got from John Burrow is if you ever go to these gigs, wear uniform. Not only because you should do, but actually you haven't got to work the room because they'll come to you because you're sitting, they know who you are. So we do this gig, and it's got David Hopkins was there, and Paxman was there. Paxman was there with his wife, Jeremy Paxman. Half-time gig, out for a bit of fizz, and I'm just standing there, and Paxman comes over because he's like a bit out of it, really. I said, what are you doing here? And he was writing a book about the monarch at the time, about Prince Charles.
Right.
And he was invited to do a bit of interviewing there. I said, oh, it's funny. He said, yeah. He said, it didn't start very well. He said, we drove in, and they take the car away, it gets valeted. And then when you leave, all your luggage is all laundered and packed with tissue paper. He said, yeah, we get there for the afternoon, and it's on a Sunday afternoon. And he said, we were having afternoon tea, and the Prince said, right, I said, pre-dinner drink soon, 7 o'clock, black tie. Oh, yes, sir, of course, sir. So Sandringham, it's only single rooms, and you have to go along the corridor to get to the bathroom. So Paxton said, I went in the room, and he says, I'll give my wife a right good telling off. He said, where's my black tie suit? He said, we get in there, it's not hanging up in the wardrobe. It's nowhere to be seen. So we're having words, it's getting a bit frosty. He said, I'm going down the corridor for a bath. He said, I'm coming down as well. So he said, we both went down the corridor, used the bathroom. When we come back, there it is.
There's the suit.
They've taken it away, dry cleaned it, pressed it. Yeah, so it was still getting all those kind of insights. It was
fantastic.
Was a real privilege. Yeah.
And working there, you were given the latitude to pick your team as well.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I mean, that's unheard of now because there'll be some HR. But as I said to a DAC from the Metropolitan Police, Alex Ferguson never asked an HR professional who was going to score goals for him.
The biggest, give you a bit of an insight here, is that towards the end, when I was sort of thinking, I know I should leave here now because we'd done. I think we did really well. Performance was good. We'd restructured a little bit. I just think I was running out of steam, and also by lunchtime I was getting a bit bored. And when I get bored, I get a bit mischievous, get myself into all sorts of scrapes. So I thought, no, I think it's about time I moved on from it. And at that time, I get a call from Chamberlain, who was the chair of Essex. He said, what are you doing? I said, what do you want? I'll come up and see you. So he drove from Essex, and basically talking about picking your own team, even they did in those days, which was not that long ago. He basically was headhunting me, tapped me on the shoulder and said, do you want to come back to Essex? I thought, that was tough, because my head was saying I knew there was a job coming up in the Met, and that was the ultimate job as specialist operations, counter-terrorism, protection of the royal family, security of the airports. And my heart was saying, go back to Essex.
Yeah.
That it was really, never have regrets, because you'll never know whether I should have done that or not. But I really was so torn on it. And in the end, I went with my head rather than my heart. I just thought the operational challenge going back to the counter-terrorism would be phenomenal. Didn't know at that time, obviously, we're going to have the 7/7 bombings. I think going back to Essex would have been lovely, but I knew so many people and they knew me. Could I really be a proper boss, or would I have favourites? And would I be, thinking straight? I thought, the lines are going to get blurred. I couldn't do it.
And you're absolutely right, because I believe that familiarity breeds contempt. And having gone through from a cadet right the way through, all of a sudden you're going back and you'd be in a position where you'd have to adjudicate on people that you've worked with, that have been your friends and colleagues for a long time. Yeah. So no, absolutely. So you've gone back to the Metropolitan Police. Yeah, honestly, mate, I'm not just saying this. This was the best time, the best and the worst. We'll talk about the worst when it all went belly up towards the end in a while, I guess. But the start of it, oh my God, to be, they call it AXO, so Assistant Commissioner, Specialist Ops,
Your brief is protection of the royal family, protection of government, visiting ambassadors who are resident in London, counter-terrorism, special branch, parliamentary protection, security of the national airport infrastructure. I mean,
what a job.
Are you sure? You know,
well, I'm Andy Hayman.
I'll tell you what, every day. But then the honeymoon period was over. So that was in the, whatever it was, I don't know, January. So then in the July, we got the Olympic vote.
Yeah.
So we get that, and we're
Yeah.
right, we're on it in London. Fantastic. Let's go out and celebrate that. I go into the office normal time. I usually go in the gym before I went in the office. I'm on the running machine, and I'm thinking, right, we've got the vote. I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get pulled into number 10. So dust down all the plans. So what is the security plan? We now start me doing that. And then I'm in the office, and then the deputy comes in and says, "Oh, no, just to let you know, there's a couple of fires on the underground." "Oh, really?" "It's a bit strange. What's all that about?" "Ah, it's nothing. It's just a couple of fires. Nothing to worry about." So I ring Peter Clark, who was my deputy who headed up counter-terrorism, anti-terrorism it was at the time. And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm not quite sure about that." He says, "Don't normally get two fires on in quick succession like that." And then as things unfolded, we then realised it's not. It's a 7/7 terrorist attack. And I remember sitting in the office thinking, it's all right walking around like, yeah, you've made it because you've got like the best job, because you're a senior chief constable, but you're also kicking doors in operationally. So it's all right saying, you know, I've landed, here we are. But now you've got to start doing it. And I just sat in the office and thought, I don't know what I'm going to do now. I've got 4 bombs.
Very honest.
Yeah. So I said to Peter, what are we going to do then? He said, I don't know. He said, we got the plans. We can methodically investigate it. But, you know, as things unfolded, it became clear that this was not just a terrorist attack, which we'd planned for them coming from outside the UK to attack. We never thought they would be homegrown. So it threw all the investigation strategies out the window. But again, a bit like the corruption, I was so lucky to have a fantastic, experienced team. And the incident room went round 2 floors at the yard. But the most moving period about all of that, I don't really know the story, but the bombers did a recce about 2 weeks previous, so they did a dry run. And that's where we picked them up on the CCTV. And they were going to do 4 trains.
Right.
But if you remember, it was a bus.
Tavistock Square.
Yeah. Ironically, outside the General Medical Council, which is ironic. What happened is that bomber, he gets on the train, and his battery on the detonator had gone flat, so it never went off. So he's now thinking they knew what time they were going to do. They peaked it for the most busiest time on the underground. So he comes off at King's Cross, goes up to W.H. Smith, buys another couple of batteries to put into the detonator, and then he thinks, well, I now know that the other bomb's gone off because I know that's what they're going to do. What am I going to do? So he goes out of King's Cross, gets on a bus, and I actually, the most iconic scene from all of that, because the trains were underground, was in fact the double-decker bus, which 21-7, which was unsuccessful. They didn't know about the existence of 7/7, and they shifted their plans to do a bus, which they did in the East End, or tried to do, because of the iconic nature. Anyway, part of the investigation, which we learned from 9/11, is you get all the victims and survivors and their families into a big hall, and you address them as to what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And I remember sitting there, and there's all the FLOs sitting alongside the walking wounded and the bereaved. And this, if I needed one telling moment that says, Hayman, just get over yourself. This is reality. Was a guy, I've given them an address. Peter had said what the strategy was to investigate. And this guy gets up, puts his hand up. He says, Mr. Hayman. He said, I've got a question. Yeah, fine, fire away. He said, I know you can answer this. He says, but it's really important to me that I ask it. So he said, my son, he was going for a job interview, and he doesn't know London at all. And we'd done a dry run about a week ago, so he knew what to do. So he gets on the underground, and the bombs have gone off, and the underground stops. So he gets off the train and he says, why is it that the first bus he gets on, he lost his life?
No, I don't.
And I thought, I mean, that you could hear a pin drop. And that's when the reality kicked in that this is not about how you feel about our job is. This is about what you've got to do for bereaved families.
Honestly, mate, it still leaves me cold to this day. And I remember where I was when that happened. And the 2021-7, we'd been invited out to the Australian High Commission's ballet. They had a ballet at the one of the theatres in London. It was Swan Lake, and we were there because we couldn't get any transport. We couldn't get around because of the failed attempt. But yeah, it's terrible. And we walk past those iconic places every day. Aldgate East, Tavistock Square.
Yeah.
And all those people that lost their lives. And it's like when you go to New York, you see the memorials, the 9/11 memorials. But
to lighten it up, I mean, towards the end of that week of 7/7, Tony Blair, there'd been a G7 at Scotland. So Tony Blair was Prime Minister, was going backwards and forwards between London and there. And we had a scrum down on the Friday night. G7 had finished. And he was sort of getting a briefing from us. And as we're getting towards the end of the briefing, we can hear the bands playing up on the Horse Guards. And it's like, I think it's the VE Day of celebrations or something like that. So we finished the meeting. And I remember me or someone said to him, well, Prime Minister, what are you going to do this weekend? I said, I've got so much paperwork I'll catch up with. He said, I've got red boxes. And he said, I'm just going to stay in the flat here with Cherie. Oh, right, okay. So all that music going on? He said, oh, no, he says, that's fine. He said, what I'm more worried about is when she starts singing along.
Oh.
And then another little chilling sort of insight was Putin came over for a meeting with Blair. And Blair said, we want to brief him on the terrorist stuff. So I was fortunate enough to get invited with 5 and 6 to support the Prime Minister and give him a briefing to Putin. We sat in Cobra's room, and I'm literally as close as I am to Putin.
Wow.
And he never smiled throughout. And this starey, icy look that he got. And the little tinker, he can speak English, but he chose to go through the interpreter. And it wasn't until 6 months later that we having had that meeting with him, he was obviously plotting the killing of Vitlienko.
Yeah.
Who, again, that sort of terrible murder. It's an interesting way of looking at it, because how many times do you have the murder victim alive for 5 days?
Oh, no.
To debrief him as to how he thought we got killed, which is what happened.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. And was that was your team would have picked that up?
Yeah. I mean, again, the Cobra meetings there were really feisty, because everyone was trying to do their best in a vacuum of knowledge and understanding or experience of dealing with something like this. I mean, he got ingested with the plutonium in a sushi restaurant. The whole of London was contaminated in where they had been.
Yeah.
Hotels, so tourists, etc. I mean, it was horrendous. So you got the health authorities trying to, which is predecessor, trying to make sense of what's the medical advice. And we've got the investigators also trying to make sense of it. And those Cobras are, I mean, I've got a mixed view about it. When you've got ministers sitting around here, on that 7/7, I remember Alistair Darling was the Secretary of State for Transport, and his only agenda was, you've got to get the trains running. We can't have no trains like we have. So you say, well, hang on, you can do that. If you want the trains running, we'll certainly get them running, but that will be at the cost of the forensic grab. And the same was with Litvinenko. You got John Reid, who was the Home Secretary, banging the table saying, give me advice. And the ministers are posturing and can't do that. And they're compromising what should be the primary objective, which is saving life and investigating the crime.
Yeah.
And so Cobra, unless you've got a really strong chair, Charles Clarke, Home Secretary, was good. Blair was good as Prime Minister. John Reid was exceptional. If you get someone who's a bit wonky, like Gordon Brown. I mean, I sat next to him every 3 months. We'd get invited to a cabinet briefing with Blair as the Prime Minister. And you'd get into the cabinet meeting and you'd have your nameplate at the seat. And it just so happened, whenever I went in there, I was the Chancellor of the Exchequer sits right opposite the Prime Minister. We did in those days anyway. So I was to the right of Gordon Brown. And he'd sit there and he'd got terrible eyesight. And he'd be writing things in a felt pen with really big letters. And he had a pile of papers. I thought, impressed or what? He's come here well briefed. So when I was there the first time, I thought, I can't be caught looking over his shoulder, seeing what he's doing. So I got a bit braver on the second time. And then I looked over his shoulder and he's doing his in tray. And he then just does a notional question at the end to sort of show he's being played. Anyway, I thought that's shocking. To be fair.
Yeah.
That is shocking. But anyway, it's not my business. But he had his comeuppance because then he became Prime Minister. And on date, and he had Jackie Smith as the Home Secretary.
Yeah, he did.
But within 3 days, he'd had the Glasgow airport attack and the one in the Piccadilly, which was at Tiger, where they put the car outside.
Yeah.
And it didn't go off. And he was all over the place. He was all at sea, as was Jackie Smith. But Jackie Smith was really straight. She said, I remember saying to me, do you know what? I never signed up for this. A Home Secretary, she said, I came here to be an MP and I'm now being asked to run a multi-million-pound business, which I'm not trained for. But then you got the other end of the scale. When Charles Clarke was the Home Secretary, great guy. Norfolk bound, so I have roots from the Chief Constable there, so we had a bit of affinity going on there. He was a nightmare to keep under control and manage. Like he liked a little curry and a bit of red wine, and so he couldn't trust himself as to where his keys were. So we were looking after him, or as a protection officer, and you haven't got to worry about take me to the flat. Just drop me off at the flat in Pimlico. So the protection boys go, no, I've got to take you to the door, get you in the door. And we had to have a word with him because he had his front door key on a bit of string through the letterbox. So you got these people. They're great people. They're well-intended. And they're
running our country.
But they're running our country.
Yeah, I saw Keir Starmer. He's a big Arsenal fan, and he was at London Stadium the other week, and I was talking to his pro officers. And they're human beings. And the great thing about Great Britain is that you're entitled to your opinion and there's nobody going to stifle it.
No.
You've just spoken about Putin. You can't possibly argue with him.
No.
But, we've all got different views.
But there is I do think that, politicians, I'm not going to use this as a sort of platform to have a pop at them because we know generally what they're like and how they're driven. But they are you have got some that I've seen firsthand who they really do work hard and they really do try their best.
Yeah.
And at times, even the politics gets them. I mean, Charles Clarke, he had to stand down on the immigration stuff. He did nothing wrong. It was a political decision that had to be made. And yet when you look at what he did, he worked really, really hard and they were well-intended. And so I would say overall, they're doing a tough job, but they're having to manoeuvre through all the politics.
They are. And you're talking about an era when policing was just starting to become politicised.
Yeah.
Literally, after he and all the other stuff, it started to become, and now it's so politicised. Everything has got an agenda to it, and policing has become very political.
I mean, I've got no qualms whatsoever. I'll say to my mates, I couldn't survive now. I'd be out on my ear roll because, and I'm not saying I'm being critical now because it's a different era, and I'm sure everyone who's leading it now in ACPO are doing their best and they're working really hard, and the cops are doing what they can, but within the constraints of an agenda which I think is stifling investigation. And some of the pods I've listened to you do in the past with other colleagues, they're making the same comments.
Yeah. And 10,000 flies cannot be wrong. We can't, if it doesn't smell right, it cannot be right. And we, but they try and sugarcoat it for what it is. But so you're there. You've met some great people, haven't you? The great and the good of London aristocracy, the royal family.
Yeah.
What were the demands like by the royal family, though, on you as the boss?
Yeah, they were. They were tough. There was no such thing as not taking a call. I mean,
It's just.
I'm ever so sorry, Mum. I'm having my hair cut. Sorry, I can't make it today. So, and I mean, there was a couple of little anecdotes where Harry was out on the lash with his mates, and they used to go to the same club in Piccadilly by the Ritz, and he's been caught in a compromising position laying in the curb, rat faced. So the Papa got hold of it. So you got to tell, as it was then, Prince Charles, this is what's happened. And same with Tony Blair, his boy Ewan, exactly the same. But these are youngsters going out on the town in London.
Do what youngsters do.
Yeah, they haven't done anything wrong. It's not a good look, but that's the way it is. So you had those kind of conversations, which weren't difficult. I mean, they're very grateful to be given the heads up, and they would deal with it in the way they deal with it. And then you'd have other calls where, which were more difficult, where certainly on the protection side, you'd have some members of the royal family who just liked the bells and whistles of the protection, but actually there was no security risk at all. But they just wanted all the bells and whistles of protection.
Yeah.
Or they would abuse the protection. One particular individual, the protection officers, they were just basically professional shoppers, and they were taking out the principal on a shopping trip. Or one decided that they were a bit late to get to Heathrow, so they blue lighted it from central London. And then they get halfway there and realise they've left their passports back at their residence. So they've had to then get the motorcyclist to blue light it back to the residence to get the passport. Those are unfortunate mishaps, mismanagement of their own affairs. But that's all part of the brief alongside the security. And it's just making sure it's all sweet. There was, when Tony Blair stood down as MP, he bought a house in Connaught Square. It was a big old townhouse. And it was a building site. And he'd gone up to his constituency and put his ticket in. And he was coming back, and I made a point of being outside his front door thinking, and I'm standing there in a hard hat. And I thought, how's he going to handle this? He's gone from a gated experience in Downing Street and living a nice life in Chequers, what have you, and rightly so. And he's now, does he realise he's having all his renovations done, but it's not inhabitable? And they get out of the car, and he just looks at it and goes, "Oh my God!" So they're human.
Yeah, they are human.
They're
human. Absolutely. When you were in the job, did you get the CBE?
Yeah, I got. I was after the chief of Norfolk got the QPM, and then after the bombings, they gave me the CBE.
Lovely.
Yeah, that was lovely. So I had two visits to the palace. Both times the Queen gave it.
How brilliant is that?
Yeah, and then but it's funny how at at those lunches, at that music in the church, just having a chat. All right, I'll try to speak a little bit more posh if you can. Mind your P's and Q's. I'll get in front of her on the CBE. I mean, you've got 25 to 30 seconds, and she literally gets a whisper from the guy to the right. And normally he will give her the heads up as to, this is the professor of medicine is going to be knighted, and this is for his services to medicine. And she'll have a conversation. So I'm in front, and then you stand there, and she leans forward, puts it around your neck. I'm completely tongue-tied. I'm all over the place. I'm blubbering, not crying. But oh, what is going on here? I felt so stupid. And all I could do was say to her, oh, thank you. But you know when you've got to go, because she puts her hand out, and as she's shaking your hand, she pushes you back.
Really?
As if to say, well, now for you've had your time. But yeah, that was good. And then it all went a little bit wonky after that. 'Cause if you remember, we had 7/7/21/7.
Yeah.
I then get a phone call, which is giving me the heads up of phone hacking. So this is basically it's how it kicked off, and it's actually, as we speak today, I think Harry's giving evidence at the High Court on the Daily Mirror.
I'm not sure he's turned up, actually.
Is he not? Right. So anyway, the equerry from Prince William, he says to us, look, I listen to his phone. I listen to his voicemails. And the voicemail, once you open it, as you know, it's a bit like email. You can't hide your tracks. You've opened it, it's open. He said, and I'm hearing these voicemails, and they've been opened, but he hasn't opened. I haven't opened them, so they're on the phone open. So we do a little bit of jiggery pokery around it, and then we uncover that they are being accessed remotely on a regular basis. So that's how phone hacking kicked off. Now, I got a little bit waspy, a little bit angry about all that, because we had 21/7, 7/7. We then had the airline plot, if you remember, trying to bring down 7 airlines over, travelling between the UK and London. And we had these smart asses after the fact saying, well, why is it you've not investigated phone hacking with the same kind of energy and rigour as the terrorist stuff? Well, it's pretty, you haven't got to be a Sherlock to work that out. Well, I've got to save life, investigate where people have tried to commit murder or have murdered. And we've got phone hacking over here. It's going to take a second priority. But none of them, in my view, got that or didn't want to get that. And if you remember, I had to give evidence to the Home Affairs Select Committee. I'd retired around that time. And they were being naughty because they were depriving me of the information that I needed, and they did not. I mean, as it turned out, Keith Fass was a slippery little operator anyway, as we all found out. We had to resign over this, the stuff he was getting up to in London.
Yeah,
and he was using that as his own political platform, and I've sat there giving evidence at the Home Affairs Select Committee, and I don't know if you remember it, I kicked off on that.
Yeah.
As I'm sitting there, behind me, I can remember it like yesterday. There's an MP called Chris Bryant, Labour guy. He's behind me and he's abusing me under his breath as I'm sitting taking the questions, and then I'm getting really cross. So I thought, right, you're going to have it, because I'd spoken to Vaz on the phone before the event, and to say to him, look, I'm not being given the information to answer these questions. It's in a big vault. I've got no access to it. I'm going to be winging it. That's no good. We've got to do this properly. And he didn't want to know. And then, if you remember, they were hunting like a pack of wolves. And I thought, I'm not having that. So I tried to hold my own and I was probably rude and belligerent, but I'd had enough. I just sat there thinking, do you know what? If you don't want to do this fairly and you're going to take your gloves off, well, I'm a street fighter as much as what you are.
Yeah.
I probably, in hindsight, came out of that not so good. But then I could look at myself in the mirror and think, well, I've said what I've got to say. I went to Leveson after that. Of course, I'm not going to do that in front of a judge. Much more respect, and will comply and answer things truthfully, which I did. And I think the conclusion around that, I'm pleased they came to the conclusions they did, because there was a recognition, because they were QCs as it was then, and High Court judge, and they understood the pressures of investigation. And although they were critical on some aspects, because there were suggestions of collusion with the paper, News of the World, they saw through that and saw things for what it was. So, I took a few hits on, in hindsight, could have done things differently. I'll take that on the chin, no problem. But they didn't get silly like the Home Affairs Select Committee. And I think around that time, that's probably, for me, all the pressures that come with that, with you getting doorstepped by journos, you're getting your
Oh,
family
did you?
getting pestered like hell. And I'm thinking, I don't need this.
No.
So, not so good towards the end. But then that comes with the territory. Who would expect to be, followed about all the time? I had protection officers and drivers, and we were doing ever so often all this sort of counter surveillance. I mean, you don't be doing that. So enough's enough.
No, and if when it comes to your doorstep, that's just
that's too
Do you? I mean, your parents are still with us.
Yeah.
I mean, what do they think of this young lad that joined the cadets, who goes on to great things? I mean, what was your final title? What were you?
Assistant Commissioner, Specialist Ops. So if you look around the country, you've got, depending on what your command is, so the top commands for size and their pressure are going to be West Midlands, Greater Manchester, Northern Ireland, might be Merseyside, might be, and then the assistant commissioners in the Met. So they're sort of deemed as a chief constable. If you get one of those jobs, that's the top of the tree. So that to get that was, I said it earlier, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and so what do your parents?
Yeah,
do they realise what you?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, they're obviously proud. But we're a family which we don't sort of revel in it all. We just that's life. Yeah. But I always ask people this because I think that we've all got proud folks. One guy said, "Well, I think that Scotty said, I think they'd have been proud." Yeah.
But for what you've done and I'm not blowing smoke up your backside.
No.
But the fact is that Andy Hayman's an Essex boy. He's an Essex copper through and through, and he's gone on and he has led the top teams in the country.
I'm thank you for saying like that. I'm obviously, my little quiet time thing, I pulled that off. But I don't think you should underestimate, especially towards the last 2 years, that it does come with a price tag on it.
Yeah, of course.
You look at all the people that have gone through the old spin dry. So Cressida was my deputy for 18 months, and we had all the dementia stuff. And then she leaves, retires, gets a cute job with the security services for 4 years, gets persuaded to come back as commissioner, and then she gets slaughtered. Right now, we may or may not agree with everything she did or said, but I know her as a person, and I know she doesn't get out of bed every day to screw things up and be nasty. She's actually a very caring, very thoughtful person. So she got her legs done, and you can the guy who was a fantastic cop, Chief Norman Bettison at Merseyside. Forget what the rights and wrongs of the Hillsborough. Look, he's gripping the row. John Stevens, Paul Condon, they gripped the row over a health and safety cock-up. You've got, there's a whole list of senior people. I'm not looking for sympathy here at all, mate, but what people don't then see is they don't see what impact that can have on you, and the fact what people think, because people don't know the true story, and half the time you can't tell the true account. I've tried to give it as much as I can today, not for any kind of vote of sympathy, but to give people a bit of an insight as to exactly what goes on.
But you're absolutely right, because you go to the Hillsborough stuff, those coppers on that day did not go there for those people to get killed. There is, absolutely not. And Cressida, everybody I talked to about Cressida, she was probably the most caring of commissioners, and she may have made some daft decisions around her staff and support of staff and all that. Okay, but that's a different story. But actually, she wasn't a bad person. Why on earth she came back? I mean,
I do not know. I mean, and then, I don't think I'm talking out of turn here, is that the network that goes on, so she would have taken private counsel from previous commissioners.
Yeah.
What do you think about this? What do you think about that? We all do that, don't we?
Of course.
Speak to mates and that. And I know that she asked, what should I do about an extension after the 5 years? Paul Condon said, never go beyond the 5. If you survive 5 years as a commissioner, just walk away, you've had a result, because something will hit you somewhere. And her counsel to her was walk, because you'll be the scapegoat. And her best intention was that she felt that she owed it to the Met to stay a little bit longer. And she stayed only another 3 months, and look what happened. I mean, she gets treated like a doormat.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how you could come to terms with that. I mean, made a decision which was for the best interest of the Met as an organisation, because that's what she honestly thought. And then she just gets trashed, and I think, going back to where I'm saying, there'll be people that will go, Andy Hayman, it's all about himself. He's a tosser. Okay, I'll take that. But hopefully there are a bunch of people that think, actually, he did all right. But don't ever underestimate, even whatever you think of some individual, as a human being, no one deserves to be going through the crap that you end up getting.
No, exactly right. And I think police officers are carved out of very strong material.
Yeah.
But you can only imagine what some celebrities are going through, where it is constant barrage. Yeah. If you tell somebody that they're rubbish and that they've done this and done that, even when they haven't, they start to believe it themselves, and then it all comes on top.
Well, I was in a boozer, so who was it? Right, it was in Piccadilly. So my normal routine, I'd be picked up by the car driver, who was also a protection bloke, which was on a scale of 1 to 10. I was still reasonably low down on that pecking order. So he would normally come into the boozer with me. So I was meeting a mate. And it was about 4:30 in the afternoon. And I said, no, mate, just stay in the car. I said, I'll meet my mate. It's fine. Just having a catch-up beer. I was going to this boozer. My mate is, I hadn't got there by that time. So I go up to the ramp, and I'm standing there, and there's a guy sitting on a stool at the bar. So I know what my mate's going to have, so I'll order a couple of pints. And then, lo and behold, my mate comes in. I say, I'll go and sit over there, actually. So we go and sit down there. After about 5 minutes, we're chatting. The geezer who was sitting at the bar, he comes back and stops at our table. And he goes, are you Andy Hayman? And I don't know this bloke from Adam. I go, who wants to know them? He goes, you are, aren't you? I goes, who wants to know? And then with that, he just lobbed this pint of beer at me and then done a runner. I mean, the protection officer was mortified. And I'm sitting there with a pint of Peroni dripping off my nose. So I don't know who he is. I still don't know to this day. So it is a weird world. I mean, I don't know how I've touched him in any way, shape or form.
No.
He's probably just a screwball. I don't know. But funny old stories, really.
How long have you been out of the job now?
I went in, what was it, 08.
Did you really?
Yeah, and then I left and then set up my own little business of consultancy. I don't know if you remember, I then started writing for the Times.
Yes.
So I did a commentary piece on the Times. Then I made a big sort of decision. I got approached to write a book, and I sort of vowed never to do that. I thought, no, I don't want to do that. And then I was persuaded because the person who was like lobbing me to do it, he said, well, no one else is going to write one. So write it from not like a sort of having a pop at people. Write it as an account. So because this will be an account of the 7/7 and all the stuff that went on under your tenure. So I thought, actually, that's not a bad plan, really, because I could write it as if you're on my shoulder going through it, so like a fly on the wall. I buckled a little bit because I thought, when I started thinking about things that had gone on about Cobra, if you remember the 90 days trying to get terrorist detention for 90 days, I thought that deserves more than just a fly on the wall. I need to give a bit more insight to that. So then I wrote the book, and I quite enjoyed doing that. It wasn't. I had someone who I could. I call it a ghostwriter, but I said no, I don't want that. There'll be some chapters that I don't think I could write because I'm too close to it. So let's sit down and I'll tell you about it, and you can write it, and I'll edit it. Other chapters, no, I want to write that. So they needed to have a house style. So otherwise, you could have be like a patchwork quilt. You have all different styles of writing. So there's someone doing that for you. So I reckon that of the 12 chapters or so, I reckon I probably wrote 6 or 7, and then the rest were written for me because it was easier for me to tell the story.
It's quite a cathartic process as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it was.
And we're good at keeping notes. I mean, we did pocket notebooks. Well, I was rubbish at keeping pocket notebooks, but
it's when you have to rewrite them.
Yeah, many a true word. Can Maleary come to my office? I want to see your pocket notebook. Yes, sir. I'll be down in 3 weeks' time. But Andy, I've really enjoyed today, and I hope you've enjoyed.
Yeah, I have.
This.
Absolutely.
And I mean, you've heard this a number of times, but is there anything you'd like to add, alter, or correct in your account that you've given today?
No, Your Honour. That's fine.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed that. Thank you.